Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this marvellous, marvellous Monday. It's another week. It's another week. We made it through the weekend. And you're looking absolutely amazing, by the way, for a Monday. Mondays aren't everyone's favourite day, are they? Certainly not mine. And if I'm brutally honest, today is going to be rant day. Rant day. So strap yourselves in because I'm going to be having a bit of a moan. Idaho 4 case, we've been talking about it for a long time, and I know some people are probably getting a little bit fed up of it. But look, while we've got the case still ongoing and things still coming out and things being spoken about and things being pushed into prominence in this case, I think it's important that at least some of us tries to balance the scales somewhat, because there are people who have a huge amount of influence who are managing to put specific pieces of information out that is infecting people who perhaps don't have the best understanding of what is going on. Now, I'm going to get to Chris McDonough in a second, because the latest 2 hours of my life wasted was listening to Chris McDonough, and clearly the thin blue line of, whatever the police say, we're going to support everything that they say and everything that they do. He's not going to take a stand. And what it's been made very clear is that Chris McDonough isn't even going to have a conversation to say, look, I support the fact that I believe Bryan Kohberger is a person who did it, but I'm going to step back and I'm going to have a conversation surrounding the potential relevance of information that is brought forward. Because he's not ever going to do that. So people have to understand that if you're someone, and I should check myself, I shouldn't listen to someone like Chris McDonough if I think that I'm looking for someone who is ever going to be unbiased. But I think it's also important to understand where Chris McDonough comes from and what he himself has been involved in to prove that he is perhaps not the most trustworthy source in the world. But anyway, I digress. We're going to reverse up a little bit, and we're just going to... I spoke about this yesterday, and I need to speak about it again, just to get it through to people who still don't seem to understand the importance of this alibi. And I get it, because it's being pushed out by the likes of the aforementioned Chris McDonough, is that the alibi is that Bryan Kohberger was stargazing. And then you've got him having guests on his show that are little closet dwelling hobbit munchers that are sitting there going, this alibi, they've taken 2 years to bring this alibi out, and still rambling on about cell phone datas with the fucking tower pings. Right, so let's just put this into a little bit of perspective. This alibi hasn't taken 2 years to come out. The alibi has never changed. The alibi right at the start when it was requested was that Bryan Kohberger was driving around. And I would imagine that even when Bryan Kohberger was interviewed, that was not filmed, remember, no, there's no proof of it, but we know he had a conversation with law enforcement. He likely told them that. He very likely told them exactly where he was in that interview. And that is potentially the very thing that hung him. When he went into law enforcement and decided to have a conversation to explain that he was with no one, he was on his own, and he was at Wawawi Park. And I would imagine that they've had this information very early on and perhaps knew exactly where he was. But anyway, let's just step up a bit and go back, because this is what we've got here. So this is Chris McDonough's video. So again, you've got a prominent person with nearly 200,000 subscribers, but is ex-law enforcement, who is pushing the alibi, long-awaited alibi, out seeing the stars and moon. That is a very, very specific... I'm accusing the interview room of pushing this false narrative, because that's what this is. The alibi is not I was out stargazing, and it hasn't been long awaited. What's been long awaited is the prosecution's information, what has had to be requested in order to corroborate this data, what they have. Now, and I could go on this video. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do a live later, which is going to go into more specific details again to try and put some of this to rest. But the alibi, what we're seeing, is no different. So this is just alibi further down the track, and with Ann Taylor saying, look, this is the alibi. This is based on the dribs and drabs of evidence that we keep requesting, and it keeps coming to us in dribs and drabs. This is how far we are with it. This is what we know. We know that we have a specialist who can say that they can place Bryan Kohberger's phone not in Moscow, Idaho, at the time with which this crime was happening. That's what they're saying. But they still require further information in order to further corroborate what they're trying to say. But the defense seemingly are in the same position as I am. And that is that if I would say that Bryan Kohberger has said to Ann Taylor, I went in there and I told them all this. They knew where I was. They asked me where I was driving around and I told them. Do you understand? And that is very likely why Ann Taylor is so adamant that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. Because he has told her where he was. It's never changed. He said what he was doing. And he's also managed to say to her, and law enforcement knows this. They knows it, which she's not stupid. And this is why she is likely near enough blatantly accused them of planting evidence. Do you know what I mean? But back to Chris McDonough a second, as we look at Chris McDonough and the Michael Crowe situation. Now, this is a guy, and I can't fucking ignore the irony of it. This is a guy who's ex-law enforcement who was involved in coercion of a false confession out of a 14-year-old boy in the murder of his sister. Now, how much of a part he played in that is it's a long case. If you search it up, there's court documentation. You can go through it all. And again, it's arguable to how much of a part he played in it. Did he play a part? He certainly played a part in the Reid methodology in terms of speaking to Michael Crowe and being involved in interviewing a boy under a situation that shouldn't have been happening, without parents and things like that, and just constantly going on and on and on. And there was a judgment made, and it was that the confession was coerced. The confession was coerced, and these officers, there was several officers involved across different stations, but they were all involved in one thing, and that was getting a confession out of someone who eventually it would lead to it wasn't him who did it. It was another person, and there was 2 other people involved in that as well. Same deal with them. Nomadic Trek as well, for those who don't know what happened there. This is another situation of Chris McDonough accusing someone of being someone that they're not, namely Brian Laundrie. So Chris McDonough attacks his social media, accusing him of being this Nomadic Trek account being a fake account or a spoof account belonging to Brian Laundrie. And they're in a fucking ruined the guy. But did he apologise? Did he fuck? Even when he got terminated himself for his involvement in it, there was still no apologies. No apologies to it. But there you go. This is a police officer or ex-police officer who, don't get me wrong, he does some fantastic stuff. The Cold Case Foundation is an awesome situation. Do you know what I mean? It's the work they do. But what I'm talking about is Chris McDonough himself. Just looking at this video and the way that has been marketed to the public, it's been marketed because he knows that that's the narrative. That's what people want to see him say and hear him say. And it's just fucking bewildering. It's absolutely bewildering that people can read a document and take little bits and pieces from it, and people like myself will sit here and have a conversation with people, and yet we're the ones who are being accused of not understanding the legal documentation and don't understand what it's saying. Like these bunch here at the interview room still saying and reading through the Gonsalves statement about Bryan Kohberger's phone being switched off. The PCA doesn't even say that the phone is switched off. It says that the phone is not transmitting to transmitters. And again, like I said yesterday, there is a massive difference between a phone that is transmitting cellular data and a phone that is transmitting geolocation data. You don't need them both to be functioning at the same time to obtain a result. I used an example yesterday of satellite navigation on phone. If you set your satellite navigation on your iPhone and you go on a 300-mile drive, during that 300-mile drive, you may drop in and out of cellular signal, but your GPS location data from that phone to enable your satellite navigation to continue, that will still work, irrelevant of what the cellular data is doing. And these people are still trying to push that Bryan Kohberger turned his phone off when not even the PCA says that. But anyway, let's breathe for a second. I suppose what I'm trying to get at is that you've got the people who we've penned as the guilters, and you've got people like myself who I have said that I believe that there is a massive chance that Bryan Kohberger just didn't do this crime. And the more that comes out, the more I believe that. Now, don't get me wrong, and I say this time and time again, I'm acutely aware that the guy could have done it. But I just haven't seen enough evidence to say that he has. And what we're now seeing is, and this is ever more, becoming very... I'm acutely aware that what is going on here is that no matter what is said, what is done, it is being twisted in a way that is saying that Bryan Kohberger 100% had to have done this crime. Like the DNA, again, they're going back to the DNA situation. I read a comment that stated, Bryan Kohberger's in Wawawi Park. How unlucky is it that while he's in that park, his DNA jumps over to Moscow, Idaho? And again, what are you going to say and what are you going to do if Cy-Ray is able to prove that Bryan Kohberger's phone was indeed at Wawawi Park, and it's corroborated by geolocation data? What are you going to say regarding that? Who do you think's going to have to answer questions surrounding the knife sheath? And I wonder what they'll then push. Well, sadly, that's the way things are. It's touch DNA, and that can come about by multitude of ways. It could have touched someone who touched someone who touched someone and touched that, and it ended up in the house. They've been very, very vague with that because they know that if the shit hits the fan and they have to explain it, it's easily explainable. It's very, very weak evidence, and it's very, very weak evidence, I feel, for a reason, because if it comes back around 180, then they're going to easily explain it away, but they will have to explain it away if it's proven that Bryan Kohberger's phone. And while we go on that far as well, I've seen about the decoy, if you like, the decoy situation, where we're trying to turn around and say that Bryan Kohberger could have potentially gone to Wawawi Park, planted his phone, and do you know what? To a degree, it holds weight, but it does fall down at a specific hurdle. Now, there could be absolute brilliance in that, to think that if Bryan Kohberger had indeed planned this with absolute minute detail taken into consideration, how he would have to use his phone, he would have to manipulate data. Let's not forget, he does specialize in this area, so he could have potentially gone to Wawawi Park, and this could have been an alibi that he had built up, and yes, he could have indeed gone over there and left his phone. But like I say, it does fall down at a certain hurdle, and that is that he then drops and leaves the knife sheath. So you think if someone had gone and planned this to this intricacy, and this, because this would have been fucking brilliance, absolute brilliance, would he have been? Would he have made that fatal mistake of leaving the sheath in there when that could have just been attached to a belt? See, that's what I don't get. That's what I don't understand. Because there is an element of utter stupidity there. That is the thought. I believe that the only person who could have dropped that is someone who has gone into their house, picked that up off the side. Think about this. Picked it up off the side because it's sitting on a shelf in their room or something, and they've grabbed the whole lot and they've ran over to the house with this knife, have pulled it off and gone in there wielding, and in the struggle they've dropped it and they've left. The knife sheath being left there, to me, is not a person who has sat there and carefully considered all this and intricate planning and moving their phone around and thinking about the geolocation data and and things like that. Do you know what I mean? I just don't see this same person being a grab it off the shelf and go into the house with it in your hand. Do you know? I don't buy that. There's a sloppiness about this crime. There is a sloppiness about it. And I don't believe, and it doesn't come down to book smart or street stupid. If you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say that it was a brilliant crime with all of these details considered and played through, but then that one sloppy thing. I don't see that. I don't see it at all. Not again when that sheath could have just simply been attached to a belt, and the rest is history. But let me know what you think. What are you seeing out here? This stuff with this alibi still, and the things what these prominent people, and I say prominent as in people who are getting hundreds of thousands of views, but they are pushing a false narrative. But then there's channels like mine, and there are others who are just simply trying to balance the scales and try and bring some thought into it and say, look, the PCA doesn't say his phone was turned off, and this alibi isn't about moons and stars. This is talking about a guy who, yes, he did enjoy moons and stars. He did go out also hiking and walking, and I also see people saying that he couldn't have gone to this park because they're closed. A fucking gate. What does this gate go around the entire fucking park? And it's 17 foot high and I don't know, solid metal. If you're telling me that people can't get in that park after a certain time, I ain't going to believe you. And just out of curiosity as well, just for the sheer hell of showing you, the Leonid, someone sent me this by email, thank you very much, shower began on November the 6th and will continue through to November the 30th. The shower peaks on 17th to 18th of November, when we can expect to see around 10 to 15 meteors per hour. So there was a period, the Leonid meteor shower, which was in November 2022 and ran around the time of the crimes and peaking around the 17th or 18th. So maybe he just went out there, thought he'd spend some time. I know that they said the weather was quite cloudy, might not have seen a lot, but unless he's got a fucking crystal ball, he ain't going to be able to 100% know what he can and can't see. Maybe just went down there to see what he could see. Who knows? Anyway, I'll leave you with it. Have a fantastic Monday, and I will catch you all in video 2 later on. Oh, and a live tonight. Be there.